if you want to send $1 to somebody, you can do that using a stablecoin. So if you want to pay an invoice, or if you want to transfer value to a team member, or if you want to merely just pay your fantasy football dues or whatever you want to do that requires dollar-based value, then you can use dollars on Cardano. So stablecoins are dollars on chain, and so everything that you would use dollars for, you can also use then stablecoins for. We'll allow individuals to go to the app.mehan.io, log in, create a user account, go through KYC, link a Cardano wallet, link a bank account using Plaid, and then enable your minting of USDM.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Woodland Pools. I am so excited to finally sit down with Matt from the Moneta team. So good to have you on.
Thanks, Guillermo. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining me. So I think like we briefly maybe covered Moneta when it was still Mehan, or Mehan, or however it is pronounced. Good name change, by the way, because that was a confusing name to pronounce.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so maybe like it's if we take a step all the way back for folks that may not know what Moneta is.
Yeah.
Can you maybe catch people up on what you guys do?
Yeah. So Moneta is the company that issues the USDM stablecoin.
Okay.
It's a fiat-backed stablecoin that's been built in sort of a model of the USDC style, where we get regulated by the various states, and we go and approach the state regulators and operate within the regulatory framework there. We have $1 for every token that we have minted. There's $1 in a reserve account that's being held at a number of different large asset managers like Fidelity and Western Asset Management. And we take the values that they deliver. They deliver the values to Charlie 3 Oracle. And the Charlie 3 publishes that on chain every day.
Cool.
So every day around 7 p.m. Eastern, the value of the USDM reserve updates. And the smart contract that governs the USDM minting and the monetary policy of the token won't let us mint more than the USDM reserve has.
That the Oracle is published.
That the Oracle is published. So we don't control that process. And so we're governed in a checks and balances sort of way. And we've had a lot of growth. We're today marking our 5 months since launch.
Wow.
And we've grown.
It feels like it's been a lot longer than that. It probably feels for you like it's been a lot longer than that.
It's been forever in development, and the process of organizing all of the different moving parts between the regulators, the fiat entities, the banks, the Oracle feed, the smart contract, the audit. There's a whole lot of process that goes into it. And we finally launched March 16th, and here it is, August 16th. We're 5 months in. We've grown the reserve up to almost $7 million.
Wow, that's huge.
And I'm really excited that today, Charles Hoskinson announced on stage here at the Rare Evo main event that there will be a 1 million USDM bounty for the Lace Wallet paper wallet feature. And a 100,000 USDM Hydra Doom tournament. At the Cardano Summit.
Oh, that's fun.
So the winner will get 100,000 USDM, which is incredible support from Charles. I'm very, very delighted that he was able to put that together.
Wow. You just covered a lot there. So
there's a lot of moving parts.
It's actually quite impressive. See, I didn't even realize how many moving parts you're dealing with there. That is very impressive, everything you've been able to do. And so if you don't mind, because I think for a lot of folks, I think there's two categories of people. There's those who know exactly what stablecoins are and why they matter and what they're used for. And then there's some that it's probably just like a totally novel concept because they just only know about maybe ADA or some few other tokens or whatever. And so if you don't mind, let's sort of deconstruct some of those things you were going through, right? And sort of help people wrap their head around it. So maybe before we even get into all of the really cool stuff that you've done, and I do want to dig into that, like jurisdiction stuff and the technology and all these things, maybe we take a step all the way back and maybe you can explain why stablecoins, what's the point? Why are they important at all, right? Why is it worth doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. On Cardano, there are a variety of ways to interact with. You can interact with dApps, you can start with the wallet, transfer project tokens to each other, you can send ADA back and forth, you can engage in decentralized applications, borrowing, lending, DeFi protocols, you can buy books at Book.io, you can do all of the things that are, and all of this rides on the back underside with on the Cardano blockchain. So if you want to send $1 to somebody, you can do that using a stablecoin. So if you want to pay an invoice, or if you want to transfer value to a team member, or if you want to merely just pay your fantasy football dues or whatever you want to do that requires dollar-based value, then you can use dollars on Cardano. So stablecoins are dollars on chain, and so everything that you would use dollars for, you can also use then stablecoins for.
Sure. And so with that, right? So then going through that thought exercise, I think before we had stablecoins or Cardano, people were like buying things with ADA or whatever else, right?
Right.
So what's the value proposition of why is it better to pay with a stablecoin instead of with ADA, for example?
The value. So how much ADA is $1?
Right. Exactly.
Right? Used to be a third of an ADA is $1, and now it's more like 3 ADA is $1.
Yeah.
2.5 ADA is $1.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually it's great. Actually, where we're at right now in the market cycle is perfect because it's exactly like the 3 is either the numerator or the denominator, right? It was either $3 per ADA or now it's 3 ADA per dollar, right? Which is a great inversion in that way, just to think about how far it's swung in just like a couple of years, right?
Well, and
so I didn't want to throw you off, but it's just funny that the math of it, how it works out that way.
The crazy thing about the US jurisdiction especially is if you're a project token and you launch and you have a token sale, right? If you're an NFT project, you sell a bunch of NFTs and you get a bunch of ADA, your tax consequence is the dollar value of that ADA times your tax rate.
Yeah, right.
And so if you raise ADA and hold ADA and the price of ADA drops, you might not even have enough to pay the tax bill.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with a couple of projects that launched at the peak.
Yeah.
There was no stable coin on Cardano, so they couldn't swap it into dollars. The other thing to think about is the blockchain infrastructure is so secure, and the background of Cardano and the cryptography behind it and the entire working system, in places like Argentina where they don't have a stable local currency, they actually have a different word for stablecoin, and I prefer this word.
Okay.
It's called crypto dollar.
It's called what?
Crypto dollar.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So crypto dollar is the word they use in Spanish for stablecoin.
Okay.
So you can think about it as though it were a dollar that's just in a crypto ecosystem.
Yeah, I love that. And like in the way that you talk through it is, I think, 2 great points there. The first one, I think from a user experience standpoint, is a simple, it's just easier to wrap my head around. If this thing costs $10, it's going to be 10 USDM. That's it.
Yeah.
And not, well, I don't know. ADA, when I woke up, was 39 cents. And right now maybe it's 36 cents or like whatever else. And it's like kind of
45 or whatever
it is.
And
it moves around throughout the day and whatever else. So I think purely from a user experience standpoint, it's easier to wrap your head around, right?
Absolutely.
And I think the other part is then from a much more consequential standpoint is protecting yourself against the volatility of it, right? If you're the business then, or whoever else, let's say you're the business and you're then like bringing these funds in and making sure that it stays the amount that you wanted it to be, right?
A lot of times you have to pay your vendors, your people in dollars. Sometimes people work for ADA. In this ecosystem, a lot of developers will work for ADA. But a lot of people who are not in Cardano, I know we have to pay our AWS bill in dollars. So we need to find a way to preserve the value of the treasury that we hold. And one good way of doing that is to swap into USDM and then hold that because it rides out the bumps.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a really once you understand like what it is and why, it's philosophically it's such a clear concept, right? Like, and even for us, like we've been having conversations very recently. I literally just spoke with Patty from ADA Markets, right? To see like at Book, for example, when we sell things and you can pay in ADA or in Stuff Token or whatever, when we price our books or our videos or our music, we price them based on a dollar price, and then have to do that conversion to ADA or whatever else, and then we have to then convert it back again, right? Like in an exchange or something else. And so we were saying it'd be really cool if we can just do an API integration with like ADA wallets, and then just do something where like then we just like have what we have, we fire off an API call to them, and then have them automate a swap that we can go straight from the ADA to USDM or something.
Right.
And then now like immediately after the sale, we have it, people can pay in whatever currency they want, and then we can settle back down to USDM or some other stablecoin in the meantime.
Yeah, that's the ultimate use case for it is to get the dollars. If you have something you have to use dollars for, then use USDM for that.
Yeah.
If you have something you have to, maybe if you want to hold ADA, you think the value is going to be going up, or you want to hold a project token that you think is going to be worth more, then you wouldn't hold a stablecoin in that case. But for the certainty of, well, we have the money today in ADA, maybe in a few weeks it won't be timed right.
Exactly.
You have to mistime your sale.
You now add speculation to your revenue, which is like not what you're trying to do unless you're in that kind of a market, right?
Well, there's so much business risk in the business itself. To add the currency risk on top of it, I know a lot of global companies will naturally hedge their cross-currency risks.
For different currencies, sure.
For different currencies, if they're earning in different countries.
Forex, like risk mitigation stuff.
So similarly, we have to think about that in this ecosystem.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So then, so that's what a stablecoin is. And so then, maybe you can talk us through, like in your mind, because there are, I can think of maybe like 3 different kinds, right? And maybe there are more, but the 3 main categories that I can think of, right, is there's the fiat-backed ones, like what you guys do.
Right.
There are the algorithmic ones, right, which is sort of a basket of assets. And then there's like over-collateralized ones, which is, I feel like, kind of almost a subset of algorithmic, right? Because it's kind of like it's algorithmic, but then technically way more than they should be needed or whatever.
Right.
So in your mind, obviously, you feel that fiat-backed is the way to go. In your mind, from a philosophical standpoint, why is a fiat-backed stablecoin, and this is not disparaging any other projects, but like, why is a fiat-backed stablecoin like Moneta a better option than an over-collateralized one like JED, for example?
Well, JED's an interesting one because they use ADA. They wrap up a lot of ADA. And then you can mint the JED with that ADA. And you can swap it from ADA to JED and JED to ADA. There's a little transaction fee, but it's not crazy. And then you get your JED. Or you could just buy JED on the DEXs, and again, there's transaction fee. But when you add up all of the fees, so if you were to go from JED to ADA, then you send the ADA to a centralized exchange. And then you sell the ADA for an amount of dollars that could be different than the exchange rate that you went from JED to ADA into. And then you off-ramp that, and there's a different fee for that. So there's a fee to swap, there's a fee for the centralized exchange trade, there's a fee for the centralized exchange to dollars withdrawal. You end up in a situation where $1 of USD or $1 of JED might only get you 95 cents or less of dollars on the other side. So nobody really considers that because they sort of take, in this industry, the transaction fees to go from crypto to fiat seem to be very high. And that's just a result of the risk parameters around crypto that I completely understand why they're that way, but people don't, when you see the price on chain, they don't think about, well, I'm going to have to bear some expenses to get this JED into $1 that's in my bank account. With a fiat-backed stablecoin, we already have the fiat in an account, and we issue the USDM. So you could go to Mihin.io, soon to be Moneta Global, and send the USDM into us. We charge you 1.5% fee, and then the dollars, that many dollars go right to your bank account. So it's not like you're going to get fee, and then your bank account. Sometimes your bank will charge you to receive the wire. So we have a variety of, we ease the system and have a lot less friction when it's fiat. The other thing to consider is, if you think about the value ecosystem of any token, you need to have positive value entering the equation and in order to run the company. So you have to do things that, if you were a vendor, say, you would buy a product at a price, you would mark it up and then sell it at a different price. And because you're providing the service of the vendor, you would then earn money, and that's a business that has been proven for centuries.
Of course,
In a algorithmic stablecoin, there's no value entering the system. So if there is $1 of ADA for the JED token, $3 of ADA for the Shen token, there's no additional value coming into the ecosystem that will pay for the operation of the ecosystem. So you end up in a situation where the fee that you have to pay to mint or to burn the JED or the Shen is the value that the ecosystem
sure.
that runs on.
Right, yeah.
With a fiat-backed stablecoin, the fiat reserve is invested in safe, liquid assets that generate a return to pay for the business. So it's actually a more affordable way to put dollars on chain because the value is not being extracted from the token holder.
Right.
It's being extracted from the fiat side.
Yeah.
And so we're able to then have a much more efficient operation.
Well, and the other thing too, I think, those are all great points, and actually a lot of those I'd never even considered before. Because in my mind, I've always just thought of it in terms of even just way more straightforward than that like algorithmic and over-collateralized, basically, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know way more about this than I do, but like, they kind of basically, you try and find some mathematical way to derive what would similarly be the value that you would need to be there as a reserve to have this amount worth of like $1, to have it stay at that value. But then you're basically constantly recalibrating. And to a certain degree, like my biggest concern with those is that like, and that's why over-collateralized ones, they're like, okay, we go at like 4 or 8 to 1 or just in case. But the concern is that to a certain degree, these are all highly correlated assets, right?
Yeah.
So if like all of crypto goes down, then potentially if it goes down bad, it makes it a lot harder, a lot more strain on that system to keep all of its equations matching up, to line up, to still have a one-to-one peg, right? Which is like the death spiral of some of these. Well, I mean, it's literally like to a certain degree, kind of like what happened with the Luna thing. Whereas like with like fiat-backed, there's no math. It's just the dollar that you have in the bank is the coin that you have on chain, right? And so that's at least for me how I was thought about it. Like I don't know if anything you have to add there, if I'm thinking about that wrong, but that's been sort of on my mind. I like the simplicity of fiat-backed, where it's like, look, there's no calculation. The calculation is, do you have one? Then here's one, right?
Well, there's a lot of things to unpack there, and we'll just do it quickly. You're talking about the ability of the algorithm that's been designed to hold the peg.
Yep.
And to have the value, have the assets there that are crypto assets,
right,
generally speaking. And we'll use the Jet example because it's ADA.
Yep.
We understand ADA fairly well.
Yeah.
And we understand Jet fairly well. It's a large loss-bearing bit and a smaller stable bit. And whether you agree with the ratio or not, I think is maybe a little nitpicky, because the risk of that ratio being wrong is one thing, but the total ecosystem of there's no extra value going in to pay for the team that built the algorithm and to pay for the future development of the project, and to pay for the current operation of the infrastructure that goes behind it.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult thing to keep going as a business.
Yeah.
But on the fiat-backed side, you have to ensure that the reserve is actually there.
Yep.
It's actually liquid.
Yep.
And that the team will redeem the token as needed. So you need to have different kinds of controls. They're both equally important, that the algorithmic stablecoin, the algorithm is correct, and the fiat-backed stablecoin, that the fiat backing is correct.
Right, yeah.
And that's why we use independent parties to verify the reserve. We manage the reserve with safe, stable, strong counterparties, and we have licenses that we're working on the process of getting regulated in each of the states, so that we can have oversight on the team from a variety of different places. Oversight on chain, oversight in the community, oversight on the regulated side. And so all those three pieces come together in sort of not kind of an algorithm of sorts that help to ensure that the token reflects properly the obligation of the company to pay for the token.
Yeah. And so it's interesting too, the other piece that never even occurred to me is then the investment side of it and the revenue generation there. So on the one hand, that is a good way then it continues paying for the ongoing work and things like that. On the other hand, when you hear about the funds that are backing it being invested, the immediate question is like, in what and how liquid and how safe? And so so what are some of like the categories and kinds of investments that like that goes into? And then when I'm assuming that there's some transparency around what those things are and how they perform. And so what, like, how does that work? That whole piece?
It's AAA rated U.S. government-backed money market mutual funds that are hold a stable value at $1, are redeemable T+0. We are a small portion of those portfolios, so we buy money funds.
Nice. Easy.
That's it.
Easy.
That's it. And
That's
we
awesome.
have a small bank account at a bank that's regulated Puerto Rican bank that is kind of for like intraday. If anybody needs cash today, we'll be able to push it to them instead of pulling it from
those funds. And it's also interesting too. Like, it's a really good, cool model and design that you've done, partnering with Charlie 3, who we've had on the channel before, and using an oracle for that. That's doing an independent audit. Those funds are there
every day
to make sure that it all lines up. And then having that be tied to the smart contract is great, because it's a really perfect example of the trustless nature of a blockchain, where your on-chain validator is enforcing that you, I know that you guys wouldn't do this, but that the entity of Moneta could be financially incentivized to have less than those reserves, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of talk that Tether has done that, and they've bought a lot of assets that are not necessarily liquid and high 100%. Quality.
And so it is then. So it's the kind of thing where it's like that Charles has talked about a lot, where like how like Google's whole thing was like, don't be evil, and he always talks about that, like, so what you need is can't be evil, right? Where it's not an option. And so what I like about the design that you have is that, right now you guys are running, you're doing great, whatever. Let's say somebody who is less benevolent comes in, that even if they wanted to, they aren't able to like do that, because it's all controlled by a third party that's auditing those funds and publishing them. And so I just think that model is really cool.
Yeah, it's really essential, not only to reinforce the trust assumption, but to raise the bar when you compare USDM to USDC, which is an entirely trust me bro minting process that I think a lot of people trust, but if you're a newcomer in the space and you don't have that history that they do, you really need to reinforce that you're doing things the right way.
And so the other piece too, I think when you're going through it, that kind of surprised me, in retrospect it makes sense, but I'd never even thought about it, is that when you have it be on the USDM side, where they are dollar-backed and stuff like that, it sounded like you were alluding to that there's different kinds of jurisdictional things you have to deal with state by state in terms of how that works. So what is that, like at a high level, like how does that work, and how does that in a practical sense impact users who want to like interface with Moneta?
So we can mint and we can serve users. So the US federal system is such that every state on many top topics can develop their own regulation.
Yep.
And the regulation around store of value and crypto has been spearheaded by the states in the US. There hasn't been any federal regulation that we've been able to get past Congress. So you turn to the states, and when you have 50 state legislatures plus DC, Puerto Rico, Guam, US Virgin Islands, a bunch of territories, they each have their own laws and interpretations of how they want to regulate crypto. So some states are very hands-off. Montana is a very hands-off state. Delaware is a very hands-off state. New Hampshire is another one that allows, is very, very hands-off when it comes to crypto. Others, like New York, are very intensive. They require licenses to do anything in the state. So we've proactively approached each state. We've asked them to provide an opinion about our activities on chain, our issuing USDM, our redeeming USDM for dollars, and that entire process. They came back with a variety of answers. Some of them said, you need this license, that license, a different license. And so we're going through the process of applying for those licenses and getting them in the states where they're required. Other states said, this is an activity, because of the way you've been designed, that we don't think requires regulation. So in a lot of those states, we've gone forward without the license, but that's merely because those states have provided explicit exemptions for us. So now, now we're in the process of getting licenses in the 30-some states and jurisdictions that we aren't licensed in. But for those where we can operate, we'll allow individuals to go to the app.mehan.io, log in, create a user account, go through KYC, link a Cardano wallet, link a bank account using Plaid, and then enable your minting of USDM.
Let's just pause there. Like,
if you're not in those states,
that's so
you
elegant,
can't.
That's so nice. That's such an easy concept, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Where it's just, hey, connect your bank account, you connect your wallet. There it is. Like, I love that.
And we use Plaid to connect the bank accounts.
Yep.
And do the KYC, so we can identify that the bank account is tied to the user who did KYC. So you won't be able to link a bank account that's not yours.
Yep.
We have tied in a number of geofence type controls that prevent any individuals from accessing who are not in those states.
Oh, sure. Yep.
If you're close to a state line and you're in the state that's good, sometimes you get shown that you're off because the way the internet works, these IP addresses are fairly good, but sometimes they're not. And those are the states where individuals can go. We have big states. We have Pennsylvania, Virginia, Massachusetts. We have Tennessee, California.
So those folks have the ability then to take their fiat and directly bring it on in that way from fiat to USDM crypto, and now they have it in their wallet and they can use it for different things, which is actually really great because if you think about it, like for a lot of people for a long time, the only way you could do an on-ramp was through an exchange and then having to like buy something like ADA or something and then go to whatever else. But this is like, it's kind of, you're kind of blowing my mind right now because it's like, it's just so easy and obvious where it's like, instead, I think the next time if I'm putting fiat into crypto, I'll just go on USDM, connect my bank account, and just go and just mint USDM itself. And then from there, I'll decide with that USDM that I'm holding, what I want to buy with it. Instead of having to make the transition from, that and like hope the exchange is actually holding my funds and stuff like that.
Right.
And so that's really cool.
You can go fairly clean self-custody. You can
like
engage
right away.
in DEX.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Transactions.
And the other thing too is, correct me if I'm wrong, but like that is to have an on-ramp and off-ramp. But if somebody wants to just have what you were alluding to before at the beginning of our conversation, just the shelter of stability, anybody can do that at any time, right? By just swapping like their ADA or their stuff token or whatever.
Right.
You may have to do a couple hops, but do that to USDM. You can do it at any time on chain, on your wallet, and it's just there.
Yeah, that's
it's just when you want to do the on-ramp, off-ramp to fiat. Right?
We don't have any control over that process.
Right,
So individuals who want to get USDM do so on DEXs if they aren't in the state where we can service. I think that one of the kind of core guiding principles of law is that you can only control what you can affect. You're only responsible. So we're not, what people are doing on chain, we don't control exactly. There are prohibitions on use of USDM, even for holders, that we try to enforce using a variety of on-chain diagnostic tools. So if we have a regulator come to us and say, hey, this wallet is a scammer, we have tools that will identify associated wallets, will identify associated UTXOs that we can then kind of blacklist ourselves, that we won't redeem those.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So there are lots of controls on the boundary.
Yeah. Again, on the on-ramp and the off-ramp.
The on-ramp, the off-ramp.
Yeah.
That's what we control.
Yeah.
But as an ecosystem, this is a very important tool.
That's great, man. I mean, this has just been a wonderful conversation. I was hoping to learn more, and it far exceeded my expectations on all the nuance. I mean, I think there were, I'm realizing, so many unknown unknowns, right? That I just had no idea about the kind of stuff you guys have been working through. And so really, really fascinating and really impressive stuff. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
So with that, if anybody, let's do this first. So we're here at Rare Evo 2024.
Yes,
and I will say, it is kind of mind-blowing to me that I didn't realize you guys had only, because I've been talking about the project for a long time, a lot of development and stuff, a lot of regulation, regulatory compliance. I didn't realize you guys only launched 4 or 5 months ago, and so that's just insane, and huge congratulations, by the way, to be up to 7 million in reserves in less than 6 months is incredible. First off, congratulations.
Thanks.
So with that, with this incredible progress you've made in such a short time, what I like doing is we're here at Rare Evo 2024. We take a trip around the sun, and it's Rare Evo 2025. What do you want to see from Moneta in the next year? So when we sit down here and we do this again a year from now, what do you hope to see in the next year?
So I've got a lot of roadmap. Two nuances to just explain.
Sure.
So Moneta is the token issuer. It's the regulated company.
Sure.
But they're above Moneta.
Yeah.
There's a company called W3I.
Oh, okay.
W3I is a software development company.
Okay.
That is building the software that runs USDM.
Okay.
So
sure. Yeah.
when the USDM reserve gives interest to Moneta, Moneta pays the interest to W3I.
Okay, sure.
To license the software that runs the platform.
Okay.
We're currently going through a community investor round crowdfunding with a portal called ChainRaise.
Okay.
To raise, to sell equity to the community. So we've been community-based, community-supported. We won a Catalyst funding round.
Cool.
We've been very embraced by the community, so we are providing our first equity sale to the community through this crowdfunding. It's SEC regulated. We've filed a lot of disclosure documentation. There's a lot of things that went into it, but the company, the website, investinw3i.com is our sort of portal landing page. There's a second website called w3i.chainraise.io, and that is the company there's like the ChainRaise portal where you can invest in the company. So we're doing an equity sale to the community, and we hope that by Rare Evo 2025, we will have tokenized that equity.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And we'll be engaging in equity tokenization transactions for us and other companies that want to tokenize equity and have it be SEC registered investment product on chain.
Yeah.
There are some boundaries we have to put on it, and we're hoping to do it on Cardano, but we may do it on Midnight instead.
Sure.
There'll be a little bit of back and forth on that. But I think that equity tokenization, the Cardano native asset standard, lends itself very well to that sort of use case. Real world asset tokenization.
Yeah.
The standard is very high on Cardano, so we think that that's a great place to start it. So we hope to have a tokenized equity round that the tokens will be given to the investors at their option. If they want to tokenize, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But I'd like to have that out. And by next year, we hope to be announcing a pay at the register solution. With
cool.
USDM.
Oh, wow.
So one of the benefits of going through this regulated process is it's the same regulation that governs electronic gift cards.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure.
So if you wanted to spend an electronic gift card, the issuer of that gift card has the same regulation that we do.
Okay, sure.
And once we get all 50 state licenses in place, then we'll be in a process to start doing real world asset transactions.
Wow, that's really
so
cool.
Either swipe at the register with a Visa, MasterCard
that's really
card,
cool.
or do a kind of electronic gift card solution that you can scan the gift card like you do at Starbucks with their thing. So those are the ways that we're engaging in sort of road mapping toward the future. So hopefully by next year we'll have that. We'll at least have a launch date ready for that.
That's
evolution.
Awesome. And actually, so one last thing that occurred to me as you were talking about that, about the sort of the parent company and all this other stuff. One of the things we think about a lot at Book and Stuff is having the core product that we have, and then building towards, always moving towards that like trustless and decentralized kind of like situation where right now, for example, when folks open their books, it goes through like our reader, which unencrypts like all that stuff. But we've talked a lot with RJ about how do we get to a point where that is maybe sharded and held in different places or whatever else, so that the idea being that then like if Book goes out of business, then anybody can still consume all of their digital media, right? Because those keys can be reconstructed, and the what we call the librarian process can still happen without us, right?
Yeah.
So then similarly, like what does that mean for like from a fiat-backed stablecoin standpoint? Do you have a good amount of security in all of this auditing and everything happens and it's all in the bank and whatever else? What happens if Moneta, what happens if the company's not around anymore, right? Then how do people, is there a way for them to like interact with those funds, or how does that happen? What happens in that kind of situation? Like how do you get your funds back out?
I think that we would come up, if there's something to happen to the company,
right,
we would come up with a solution that would provide continuity into a new entity.
Oh, okay, sure.
So we would
Fair
either
enough.
go and push the reserve and the token obligation into another company.
Sure, yeah.
And have a succeeding company then resolve it. But largely, I would imagine we could probably have a process for redeeming the token.
Yeah.
The question of the business is one thing, but the reserve is actually larger than the number of tokens we have outstanding. So there is the reserve there to back all the tokens.
Oh no, and that's the thing is that that's the thing. It's there, but then what I'm wondering is like
the way that we've built.
How do you facilitate the extraction? If like let's say you get hit by a bus, right?
Right.
Then it's like then even though those funds are there and they're available and it's truly lined up.
We have a variety of disaster recovery processes that we've developed around having multiple signing keys, different places, and had those sorts of things. Like that, all that disaster recovery stuff is still available. We're not really thinking about what if something happens to us. We're thinking about what if something happens to our cloud service provider. What if something happens to, what if there's an internet outage on certain parts of our system? How can we continue to operate if we just pair it back to the blockchain only? So that's where we work with. That's what's been a lot of our planning is how do we continuity plan for outages in non-Cardano chain stuff. And that's what we have now. We have a lot of kind of raw code that we've built that will work on a low level directly on chain to get the transactions processed through and then send the USD out. But those are kind of very tail end scenarios.
Well, just curious, also, like what the thought had been that sort of from that regard,
That's why we have two companies too.
So
Moneta merely holds regulated licenses. Regulatory licenses, and issues the token, and holds the reserve, the token, and the licenses. W3I is a separate company that does the business. So investors invest in W3I. Moneta passes the revenue up to W3I. But the risk of business operations is all at W3I. It's not at Moneta. Moneta is a special purpose vehicle that merely facilitates this transaction itself. So if there's not obligations and liabilities at Moneta,
that makes sense.
The obligations and liabilities are at W3I.
That's again
that's
very elegant design.
That's a standard operating model for a lot of companies in the finance space where they create narrow special purpose vehicles to serve a specific purpose, and then they're operated by a third party.
Really cool. The more we talk, the more I realize that I have no idea how any of this stuff works. And it's like this has been such and I'm sure that people who are watching are similarly going through the same exercise where it's like, it sounds so simple. It's just like, here's $1, here's a token. And it's like all of the stuff that you guys have put into it is, again, fascinating and very impressive. So like very, very well done.
Thanks.
So with all of that, if people want to learn more or they want to get involved, I know you say you have this funding round coming up. So if they want to stay in touch, know when that stuff's happening, like what's the best way folks can hear about more and stay in touch with you?
There's the USDM official Twitter. That's a fantastic spot for us. We have a Discord. That's discord.gg/USDM. And if you go to investinw3i.com, then that's the great portal to get into the investment round if you want to be one of the first equity investors. Actually, aside from the money that I've put in, the first equity investors to the public.
Matt, thank you so much for the time. This has been a wonderful conversation.
I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate learning so much more. If you want to find out more about Moneta and USDM, all the links he was just talking about will be in the description below. If you have any questions for the team, let us know in the comments. And if nothing else, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.